I've spent years drawing the structures behind serious Australian wealth, and underneath almost all of it sits the same plan. 4 steps built in a deliberate order, and there's one step right in the middle that looks like a mistake. Like the people running it suddenly do the opposite of everything that got them there. They don't. This is the first video in a series. Today, you get the master plan, the full elevation, the whole structure on a single page. Then, over the coming weeks, we take it apart and build it back up one step at a time. Each of the 4 steps gets its own video. How it actually works, the numbers underneath it, the structure that holds it up, released in the exact order the plan is built. So treat this one as your map. Everything that follows fills in the detail. Let me show you the shape of it. Most money advice hands you tactics. Buy property, max your super, start a side hustle. What it almost never shows you is the order, the sequence those tactics sit in, and why each one only works because of the step before it. That's what a blueprint actually is, not a pile of materials. A plan for what gets built first, what carries the weight, and what holds the whole thing up. By the end of this, you'll be able to read the entire plan, all 4 steps, and exactly why the one in the middle isn't the contradiction it looks like. One note before we unroll it. This is general information, not personal advice. This is the pattern I've watched get built, not a set of instructions for you. Your situation is your own, so get advice before you act. Step 1 is almost always a business, not a job, a business. And it sits first for a reason that has nothing to do with passion or being your own boss. A salary, even a very high one, has a ceiling and a single point of failure. You. A business is the one wealth engine where you control the throttle. You decide how much it makes, how much it keeps, and this is the part most owners miss. Whether it's worth anything the day you stop showing up. Because here's the wall most people walk straight into. They build a job that pays well and they call it a business. If the whole thing runs on them, their relationships, their knowledge, their decision making, then they don't own a business. They own a job that can't be sold. And a job that can't be sold is worth nothing the moment they want out. The plan treats it differently from day one. The business gets built to run without the owner. The knowledge goes into systems, not just someone's head. The income comes from many customers, not one. And the numbers are kept clean enough that a stranger could read them and understand exactly what they'd be buying. That's the difference between an income and an asset. An income stops when you do. An asset can be sold for a multiple of what it earns to someone who wants to keep it running. So step 1 isn't start a business. It's build an engine that one day somebody else would pay to own. Everything after this is funded by what that engine throws off. No engine, no plan. Step 2. The engine starts throwing off more cash than the household needs. The question becomes where it goes. And the pattern is remarkably consistent. It goes into property. Sometimes the first purchase is a factory or warehouse the business operates from. Sometimes it goes into the family home. And more recently, there have been a lot of rent vestors. Rent vesting is where the family rents where they want to live and invests in residential property where the numbers make the most sense. But the interesting part isn't what they buy. It's how they pay for it. They don't wait until they can buy property outright with cash. They deliberately borrow. They use the bank's money and keep their own working elsewhere. Now, hold on to this because it comes back later. At this stage of the plan, debt goes on purpose. Here's the thinking, drawn plainly. A loan is a fixed pile of dollars. Over 20 years, inflation quietly eats the real value of that debt. You repay it in future dollars, which is worth less than the dollars you borrowed. Meanwhile, the property it bought tends to rise with or ahead of inflation, so the asset grows while the debt, in real terms, shrinks. Used carefully, borrowing turns inflation from something that erodes your savings into something that quietly works on your side. That's why this phase has a name, accumulation. The whole point is to control as many quality productive assets as possible using borrowed money while you're young enough and earning enough to carry it. Leverage is the lever. It lets a modest amount of equity move a much larger amount of asset. It cuts both ways too, and the breakdown videos are honest about that. But structurally, step 2 is the deliberate decision to take on debt and let time and inflation do the heavy lifting. Remember that. Debt on, because we are going to reverse it. Step 3. At some point, the bank says no. Every borrower hits a ceiling, a point where lenders won't extend more credit against the same income and assets. Property can't keep compounding on debt forever. So the plan changes shape. This is when shares enter, usually Australian shares paying franked dividends or simple broad funds that hold a basket of them. And the reason isn't a hot tip, it's 3 structural jobs. First, liquidity. Property is a single lumpy thing. You can't sell a corner of it to raise cash. Shares can be sold in part on any day. After a decade of illiquid property, the plan wants something it can actually move. Second, income that doesn't need a tenant or a tool belt. Dividends arrive whether or not you did anything that quarter, and franked dividends carry a credit for tax the company has already paid, which, handled correctly, softens the tax on that income. That's a genuine feature of the Australian system, and it earns its own video. Third, honesty time. This is usually the highest tax stage of the entire plan. The business is mature, the income is peaking, the person is often sitting in the top bracket. Fresh income gets taxed hard. So part of step 3 is simply choosing assets whose tax treatment is gentle and parking surplus where it's least punished. It's not the dramatic wall, it's the ballast, the weight set low in the structure that keeps everything steady when the wind picks up. And quietly, it sets up the step that changes everything. Step 4. And here is the step that looks like a mistake. For 3 steps, the plan has done one thing above all else: take on debt, control assets, accumulate. Now it does the opposite. It sells the engine, and it starts paying the debt down. After years of borrowing on purpose, the plan deliberately switches leverage off. That's the move that confuses people. It looks like a contradiction. It isn't. It's a change of job. Start with the sale. Remember, step 1, the business was built from day 1 to be sold. Now it gets sold. And this is where being an asset instead of a job pays off in the most literal way. Australia has a set of small business capital gains tax concessions, a part of the law written specifically for owners selling an active business. Used correctly, they can dramatically reduce the tax on that sale, and in some cases remove it almost entirely. A large slice of the proceeds can also be moved into superannuation under a special lifetime cap that exists for exactly this moment. A business sale flowing into the most tax-favored environment in the country. This is the single highest leverage tax event in most people's lives. And it's the payoff for 15 years of building the business properly. It needs its own breakdown, and it has one coming. Now, the reversal itself. Why switch the debt off? Because the job has changed. For 3 steps, the goal was growth, and debt amplifies growth. Now the goal is income you can live on, safely, without working. And at that stage, debt is just risk you no longer need to carry. Accumulation rewards leverage. Decumulation punishes it. Same person, opposite settings, because they're now playing a different game. So the proceeds pay down the loans from step 2, easing the cash flow on those properties. Ones that were negatively geared can turn cash flow positive. The portfolio from step 3 throws off income. The structure stops being a thing you build and becomes a thing you live on. There's often one last quieter move. After the concessions have done their work, some families take whatever gain is left over and direct it into a private charitable foundation. A structure where the capital's given away for good, but the family decides how it's invested and where it does its work. 4 generations. It isn't for everyone, and it's the most personal step on the plan. But it's where the blueprint sometimes ends. A structure that outlives the person who drew it. So unroll the whole plan and read it in a single look. Step 1. Build a business that's an asset, not a job, the engine. Step 2. Turn the business's profits into property using the bank's money while time and inflation work for you. Dead on. Step 3. Once the borrowing runs out, add shares that pay franked dividends for liquidity and steadier income. The ballast. Step 4. Sell the engine, using the concessions built for exactly that. Switch the debt off and move from building wealth to living on it. 4 steps. One deliberate reversal in the middle that was never a mistake. Just the moment the plan changes its job from growth to income. That's the architecture. Now you can read it. That's the blueprint. The whole plan in one drawing. Over the next few weeks, I'm taking each step on its own, starting with the one everything else rests on. Why this plan almost always begins with a business. If this was useful, hit the like button. It genuinely helps the channel reach more Australians who need to see this. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming.